Welcome to episode 10, the final episode in season 2 of Elevated Businesses, where I have conversations with cannabis entrepreneurs. Today, I am thrilled to introduce you to Desiree King, another fellow entrepreneur, cannabis compliance consultant, and woman in cannabis. I am so excited to just unpack her business, how she started DK CannaConsulting, what she's doing for the cannabis industry, and dive into what's going on in California cannabis industry a little bit more. Desiree is also a certification student with RMCC, so I am absolutely thrilled for her trust over the years and to help support her in starting and launching her own business. So let's dive right into the conversation so you can meet Desiree. So Desiree, thank you so much for joining me today. You know, you and I crossed paths a few years ago when you entered into our certification program. And I just want to thank you for the trust over the years. It's been really great to watch you and your company grow and everything that you have going on. And so before we dive into California, your business, a woman in cannabis, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started in cannabis.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today as well, too. I love chatting with you, of course. Love talking about compliance, and then anytime I can get together and do this, of course, I'm going to say yes. So I work within cannabis compliance, and I've gotten into more of the operational compliance side as well, and I try and really specialize within that area. Kind of came into this hap chance in certain circumstances there, but I come from working and being around cannabis, pre-legalization here in California, and I grew up that way, and I've been around all of it, and I come from canna parents, and so it was inevitable that I would be getting into this. I just didn't know where and how I would fit, before all of the things happened here in California and regarding medical and recreation, I was on a path for my business degree, and I was trying to finish my bachelor's and just kind of focusing on that more than anything. And as soon as medical came through, I started to venture into the California landscape, and starting out as doing little things here and there, bud tenders. I was working at inventory for a little while. And then finally, I kind of moved into the executive assistant role in working with certain companies and owners of companies. At that time, it was a lot of dispensaries more than there was manufacturers and stuff like that. So I kind of made my way into that. But I was also living kind of like a double life. I was working in the corporate world, and I was doing a lot of the cannabis stuff on the side and at night and everything else. And so I kind of finally made the leap and cut off the rest of the major corporate other ugly side of everything, and took it headfirst into cannabis, and really focused within Northern California more than anything. I still had connections and everything to legacy cannabis and all of that, but I really wanted to dive into this and see what I can contribute to the industry here, bringing like a lot of my business savvy and a lot of my skills, and seeing how this could incorporate into cannabis, something that I knew was going to have this unique dynamic to it, in regards to your employees and building that culture and that morale, and trying to come up as an actual industry and being recognized as a real business, let alone just in California, but everywhere else as well too. So I was really hoping to be a part of that change, and so I did it. So yeah, and I've been doing it ever since. Haven't looked back.
Love it. A lifer, right?
Yes, yes. And I mean, like, I know that we've talked about this before too. There's this labor of love thing. And honestly, I mean, it's really funny when we think about this because, like, I know, like, many of us here in California, I was raised around here and, I'm a stoner, and we sat around many a time smoking and thinking how great it would be to have this be like a real business and, all this kind of stuff. And here it is. And I definitely had to be a part of that. But I knew that there was a lot of legwork that needed to be done in this foundation, this starting point that we all need to, build on. And, you want to do it right the first time. But, sometimes you got to go backwards a little bit to fix a few things and, and make it right and come back. And that's kind of like where California is right now. And honestly, that's what keeps me here. I think more than anything is all the challenges that we're facing here. So, yeah.
Yeah, California is so unique. Like, anytime I'm working with operators in California that are looking to expand into other states, I think some things that really shock them is, like the testing workflows, where you test in the supply chain compared to California, how we do that at the distribution level, and in other states, it's at the harvest batch and like before it even really enters the supply chain, or that manufacturers or cultivators can do distribution activities. You don't have to have a distributor license to go business to business. It's just, there's been a lot of red tape in California, I feel, with the distribution license and how they have been trying to essentially create a bottleneck in the supply chain is kind of how I explain it, and to kind of keep control of taxes and things along that nature. And I know we're going to dive into taxes and everything that's happening in California in this conversation. But before cannabis, so you got your bachelor's degree in business, and then weren't you also an executive or helping out and supporting executives outside of cannabis before moving into the industry?
Yes, yeah, I did actually. I worked in a variety of different industries. And I kind of, when you're an executive assistant, it's something that can actually move very easily within different industries, just because supporting high-level executives and C-level executives, board members, committee members, these people tend to have the same type of needs that most business owners do in most industries. It's the details that kind of throw it up a bit. But what was interesting is obviously we have some very unique and extravagant owners here in cannabis as well too. So my ability to deal and support those type of entrepreneurs and business owners like really came together for me. It really did. In the past, I've worked with some very unique individuals, so I got a lot of experience with that. So it just seemed to work very well, and to be able to provide that support to these new cannabis business owners and operators, that that insight, that some things that you may not actually see, that was really interesting to integrate into my work. So I really enjoyed it. I did.
I love it. Definitely a skill set that's needed. I mean, shifting, going into the medical market is a little bit different than an adult use market. As you saw in California, a lot more red tape, a lot more regulations, significantly more stringent on record retention and how to operate your business. And I feel when adult use comes into a new state, there's a mindset shift. Like, you really have to think about your business a lot differently. And it's not just how it was during the legacy days of, input versus output. I grew this much cannabis, made this much money, let's call it a day. Like, you really have to drill down into your cost per gram, looking at employment laws. Like, there's all these different things that can be really challenging for operators, especially going into adult use, I feel. And I feel like that's a similar pattern I see in each state that comes online with adult use. And I feel with your previous executive experience like that, that's a huge skill set that we really need to be better businesses, better entrepreneurs, lead better teams. And so with that being said, you learned so much and started your own cannabis consulting business, specifically tying into compliance and operations. And correct me if I'm wrong, but also helping out with licensing too, right?
Yes, yes, all of that and more. Which a disclaimer here, I must state that is really not something that a lot of people within my position tend to take on, and I normally don't suggest a lot of people to encompass the whole entire activities in regards to licensing and local permitting and all of those things. I just happen to have a lot of land use experience, land use management experience, coming from construction and development. And so it was something I was just kind of used to. And it also I will say that it actually pushed me into working within compliance itself. I was an executive assistant, but I've also delved in working within legislative framework for when I was working in renewables. I worked amongst CPUC, California Energy Commission, in regards to establishing new programs for renewable products and stuff. So I'm that whole aspect on the other side of working in assembly and legislation, and then also the land use management as well too. It kind of came into play. I really didn't plan on that though. I didn't think that a lot of that would be coming into play and being the most, well, not the most, but it is one of the most important things if you're going to take it on, if you're going into cannabis, this local approval process. And it's one of the biggest bottlenecks within California, no matter where you're at. It really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really didn't think that the licensing and stuff would be coming into play. Like I said, I don't really suggest a lot of compliance individuals, especially within cannabis, to take on all of that, because compliance and operations is a lot. But I would not be having all of that knowledge and experience if it wasn't for people like you and RMCC and providing that knowledge and really giving that experience, that sharing your experience, that's probably it. You guys not only going through it once or twice, but a few more times after that, and then understanding the struggles and what exactly anybody would need if they were confronted with these certain issues or these roadblocks in their processes and their operations within the cannabis industry. And so it was those little tidbits of information and skills and knowledge base that I was able to get from you guys that actually made, it gave me the whole picture. It really gave me that full insight and understanding. And then, of course, throwing myself out into the floor, diving into the fields, getting into that inventory room and digging around and getting dirty, that was the other parts of it as well. 'Cause I wanted to know. I really did. And I definitely went for it.
And that's really great advice for any of our listeners that are looking to get into the cannabis industry, whether from a licensing aspect or really boots on the ground, helping operators day in and day out with their operations, but mostly staying within their regulatory framework and staying as compliant as possible. It's so hard to take on licensure, so before the business has even started, and that entire process, and then actually getting the business launched and getting all the training and the documentation and all of that in order. And then we also have the third phase of ongoing operations and making sure that you're like that safety net to make sure that they're always staying within that regulatory framework. So if you're looking to start your own consulting business, you really need to niche down as granular as possible and really focus on the areas that you can be an expert in, because there's times that I see these SOPs. A lot of times you and I do similar work on going in, building efficiencies, building out documentation, building out training plans, making sure people are successful long-term without us, because that's our ultimate goal. And a lot of times I see these SOPs that attorneys have written or other consultants have written that don't actually have that in-depth on-hands experience. And all of their SOPs are what to do, not how to do it. And so that's where I feel you and I really step in and help out the operators and say, okay, that regulations say X, Y, and Z, but how do I do this? What forms do I need to complete? What is my communication plan? What is my training plan? Like, what is your experience around that with the clients you've worked with and really getting granular in how to implement these different strategies?
Yeah, so that's like one of my favorite things to do is just to review their assets. I like to see their deliverables and their assets. That's usually one of the first things that I go for. And normally it's something that when I come across a client for the first time, they're like, no, it's fine. It's okay. We already got it. And they try and just, shuffle it off. And it's like, no. Wait, let me look. I just want to look, let me just look at it. It's okay. And sure enough, I make the whole meeting about this because there is those things that are missing. And there was something that I learned like a long time ago, being on a construction site. And I remember the lead on that job site and his idea in regards to like training and making sure that everybody was up to date. And I mean, we're talking about some major heavy equipment at this job site, and there was a lot of dangers and all kinds of stuff, high-rise building kind of thing. And his idea of safety within the workplace was making sure that everything, all knowledge base, anything was written in regards to the company and practices and policies, that it had to be understood by absolutely anybody. If they walked off from the street and walked onto that job site and had no idea what you're doing, if they could pick up that piece of paper and read it and understand it, then it was good. If they knew what to do, that was the thing. He was so drilled down to that. And I never forgot that. To be quite honest, that GM, he actually, he prided himself on the whole thing of not having any accidents on site for a very, very, very long time because of those practices. And I'll never forget, he always talked about it. It was always like, oh, it's been 482 days. Like, he talked about it constantly. So I've always wanted to say something like that about a company and a facility. Like, there's never been any injuries, ever on this place, especially with cannabis just starting out. I mean, I would be like, oh my gosh, I want to keep my record. So the whole thing of SOPs and playbooks, having the how to, not the what to do, is super, super important to me. I mean, I get down to pictures. Like, I want people to understand, like, I draw little arrows, and most facilities that I happen to like put my hands on in operations, you'll see that there's just tons of signs everywhere that say, if you have any questions, contact me. I just, it has to be that drilled down, because if you're getting questions back from your people on the floor and they're asking you about these SOPs saying, well, what if I did this? Or what happens if this happens? Then your SOPs and your playbooks need some more attention. That's literally it. Yes. That's all it comes down to. So, I mean, it happens 99% of the places I go to. And there's nothing wrong with that, though. I mean, we're still, early and emerging into this industry. It's a lot of stuff to take on. And, I know a lot of people like just want to get to the goal line of just being functional in some sense and licensed and permitted, but there's so much more. There's so much more, and it's okay. It'll happen, know? So yeah, that's my biggest thing. I'm really big on that.
I love that. Yeah. And I think the pictures are a really great idea, and I might need to steal that from you and implement that into some of my playbooks and things too. Yeah. And you've seen with my playbooks, I love to do workflow diagrams. I love to do like a high level checklist with effectiveness criteria, because really, when people are using those playbooks in the operation, I want them to pick holes at it. I want them to say those what ifs. And then I can be like, okay, my workflow diagram went from this to like this. And now we have like this whole other pathway to be like, okay, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do that. And it's just so much can change. We know our turnover in cannabis is extremely high. I think I've quoted this statistic in previous episodes as well, but from banks, they released a document saying that I want to say about 60% of employees leave after the first 90 days in cannabis. So the fact that only 40% of your workforce will stay after 3 months, the training plan, the structure, letting them know exactly what their duties are and their expectations are a really big piece that you and I are really trying to focus on and really try to build the industry up, because you can have a training plan, but that training plan might not actually detail the effectiveness criteria or those key performance indicators to make sure that they're really retaining that information and know what they're truly supposed to be doing.
No, that is correct. It's really tough. It really is. And that's definitely I'd say probably like the third or fourth question I get into when I talk to owners and operators is to find out like how they, if they ever are walking out on the floor, if they know their production line manager's, full name, how often do they engage with their employees out there? It's a big, big thing, especially in our industry, because it actually shows that you're engaged, you have an open door policy, and that you're invested and you're interested in your employees and what they're doing for your company. And there's a lot of times where I get that it's difficult, it's low scale, and you've got, you're trying to keep your overhead down. And so you don't really have a lot of people, but each person wears like multiple hats and all of these things. It can be bootstrap startup. Like it really can be, but that doesn't mean, you can be skipping out on some other things that are really crucial and important for helping to build a little bit of that culture with your employees. But I do know that it's not an industry for everybody. I mean, whether you are, working on a line or if you're in a high level, C-level position as well too. This is not for everybody. It's a tough industry. It really is. So I get it.
It's a labor of love, and you got to be in it. Like you have to be full force in it, both feet in, swimming in the deep end. Like
a little crazy. I mean, a little, you might, a little bit of a death wish, maybe. I don't know. Like I like the fetish. Sorry, that's so bad. But
I love it. But it's so true. It's so true, though. Like you have to be, because it's a fire drill day in and day out. You are putting out fires constantly, especially in the compliance role. And it's no day is ever the same. It never is. And so you have to be a problem solver. You can't just, put things on the wayside and just be like, oh, I'll get to it when I can. Like you have to be problem solving at all times. And so with that being said, that is very much a startup entrepreneur mentality. And I would love to talk about your business, especially for some of our listeners that are inspired by your business, by RMCC, want to start their own consulting business. Let's start from the beginning. So when you had that goal to start your own company, what were those first steps that you did to start DK Consulting?
Well, actually it was, because it just kind of started happening and I kind of fell into it, just because there's such a weird a niche need in certain instances in California. It's really hard to like put into words sometimes. It's just that we have a strange dynamic here. And I know you touched on it in the beginning of this conversation as well too, especially when it comes to distribution. But I kind of realized that, okay, this is happening and I'm doing this. This is great. And I kind of had to figure a few things out, like what I was going to focus on, because I kind of came out of the gate with the whole, I can do everything. It's kind of weird, like when you start your own business outside of cannabis. And this is something that I've just been used to most of my life. And I've helped many entrepreneurs in their startup companies. And so I just know, like, you get out there, you hustle, you get clients, you push. That's not really what you're doing here. That's not what you should be doing. And you also really need to drill down to exactly what it is that you can handle and what you can offer to your clients as well, too. I had a menu that was like forever and a day. Yes, I can do all of these things, but in actual reality, it's, I need to, there's some kind of precedence that you need to take for yourself in scheduling and planning and, laying out your offers and your services. So you never want to like overburden yourself on this, because you will get stuck, which I have been. And I've been kind of in those positions with, so you just want to make sure that you're just not putting it all out there and everything, and, because if something pops up while you're out in the field and they're like, oh God, I really need some help with this, this, and I wonder if I can find somebody to do it. And it's something you can do, at that time you can add it on and, offer that service to them. But yeah, first and foremost, I had to really drill down my services. The next most important thing, and it probably should have been first, it's just because the ball started rolling so fast, I just couldn't keep up, is legal. You need to get some type of legal assistance. Consulting, especially in cannabis, you are a non-plant touching cannabis business. So it's a little bit easier. And like, I came from cannabis businesses who are just restricted and blocked in every single way. And so there's certain things that you really need to make sure that you take care of. So legal, setting up an LLC, getting your insurance, getting bonded as well too. There's a lot of things that kind of come into play, because this industry is risky. So there's a lot of things that you want to do to not only cover yourself, but you're actually covering your services and your deliverables that you give to your customers as well. So there's a lot of backup that you really want to do. And then the last thing for me was to really solidify my source of truth. Being that there's a lot of writing, a lot of documentation, there needs to be some type of documented like source of truth as to where you gain your knowledge from and your knowledge base. And I rely on RMCC for a lot of that information. And I do have other assets as well too. And they mainly came from my network, within cannabis and actually outside of the cannabis industry when I used to work in other industries as well too. A lot of them coming forward because I associated with a lot of lobbyists. And working in legal as well too. There's a few assembly members that I've worked with in the past as well. So I kind of incorporated a lot of that into it as well too. But those were probably like the three biggest things that I really I felt that for me really helped, but I'm sure I probably could have done that in a different order. But yeah, it was definitely, I had to drill down my menu of services first and foremost and really focus on what I wanted to do. I know what everybody needed. Right. But it was what I wanted to do because this is my business. That's the reason why I'm starting my own business, Exactly. So, and then legal, and, which anybody and everybody should get no matter what. That's probably one of the biggest things and probably one of the first things you should do. So definitely get that. Yeah, absolutely. I resonate with all of that. And to kind of put a little peace of mind here, I was in the exact same order too. So okay. When I first had my service proposal, I had like this 5-page beautiful design from like my marketing consultant that was just like beautiful, but I wasn't landing clients. I'm like, what the heck? Because it was just like so overwhelming to get 5 pages of all these services and things. And so then when I started to figure that out and I started to bundle things into what I call my launch package, and so that's a 3-phase engagement over an entire year where it's like a true partnership with me. And I go through the assessment, the SOPs, the training, the implementation, and all of those different things. But it took me a while to get to that point because I realized I can't just hand over a menu. I need to communicate what problem I'm solving and how we're going to get there. That's all they care about. They don't care about the what and everything else and what we're going to do to get there. They're like, okay, what is my end goal and how do I know that this is successful at the end of the day? And so really trying to figure out how to package and communicate that, and just, that comes into selling, marketing, sales copy. There's like this whole other hat as an entrepreneur that like you have to start learning and diving into all of those things. And just like you, my next step was legal and insurance and bonds, and the insurance piece, extremely important to get errors in admissions insurance. That will cover your ass so much. And I definitely suggest however many licenses you're engaging with, get up to $1 million of insurance for E&O insurance, because that will cover you, and you can, and then depending on your policy and whatnot, like that will cover you per
issue or per situation if you do ever have to cash in on that E&O insurance. Thankfully, I've never had to do that, but it's there for your own safety net. And then you need to have legal, not only legal and to ensure that you're advising properly, but also for your agreement. One of the mistakes that I made in one of my first agreements was, instead of having, if like a dispute happened, instead of requiring everything to go to mediation, I had stuff in there about like federal courts and whatnot. And it's like, well, we're cannabis, we're not federally legal, so like, no. And so when I got my attorney, Vicente Cederberg, actually, one of the leading cannabis attorneys, they reviewed my agreements, and I was just like, hey, and they like cross all this out. They're like, no, like you do not want to do any of these things. So these were all like really critical moments, my first, I would say, 6 months of starting the business, that were just, feet to the fire and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm used to doing the, learn as you go. And, it's also that entrepreneurial spirit, like you just jump in and do it. If you really want to do it, just get out there and do it. And I get that as well, too. But I do also have like a lot of that experience of working with a lot of entrepreneurs and just kind of having that knowledge, thank goodness, to know that, a lawyer, whatever you're going to pay, it will be worth it. I know a lot of people see it as like an overhead in some sense. And I've been told by some of the, greatest executives that I've ever supported and worked, they've told me the same thing as well, too. It'll always be worth whatever it is that you're going to be paying, as long as they're good, of course. But, and there's a lot of other things that they pointed out, too, that I wasn't even thinking about as well. So that's when the E&O came up. I didn't know because I've only used bonds in the past, and that's usually been something that would cover me for anything else that I was working in before. But yeah, E&O definitely works for this. I mean, you definitely want to have that. So yeah, it was quite interesting, a definite learning experience.
Always. And I would say, just to reinforce the legal and attorney statement, make sure they're a cannabis attorney. Like, I feel that is like so critical. The amount of people that I've worked with that, and this is kind of more on the licensing side, maybe not exactly pertaining to us and our businesses, but people are like, oh yeah, he's an attorney, he's going to help. I have my brother-in-law do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, are they in cannabis, or are they from other industries? Because as we know, and through this entire conversation, we have very unique situations that you really need that hands-on experience to really digest and make the right decisions, and have the right advisement through all of that. And you also mentioned, when you go to deliver your menu or your services or your packages, make sure you find out what you truly enjoy doing. This is your business. So like, do what you truly want to do. That is definitely something that I have struggled with over the years, as I have scaled a team and then cut back a team. And I just realized that, hey, the licensing, not so fun. Like, not exactly what I enjoy. Like operations, doing that day in and day out, something I really love. Metric auditing, definitely not exactly something I love, but I'm good at it, and I can get into a flow state pretty easy when I'm doing those types of audits. So it's like trying to pick your battles and, time management, figuring out what you truly want to do.
No, exactly. It's the whole reason why I did this anyways. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved being employed, but, it's really something totally different to be working for yourself. I mean, it really is. And so it's kind of funny. It's almost like the same conversation that I have with a lot of cannabis operators as well, too, especially when it comes to like manufacturing and distribution. I'm usually letting a lot of them know that, you guys are the license holder. Remember that. Don't forget that. You guys are the license holder. Brands that come through that aren't license holders, don't allow them to push you around. And, this is your company. This is your business. Make sure that you're doing yourself right before you put yourself out too much. So, and it's the same thing that I would do for myself. So, yeah, that's, like I said, that's the reason why I got my own business. Yeah, I'm making my own schedule. I'm looking out for me.
Yeah, for sure. And so with that being said, I am sure that you have gotten proposals from operators for you to come join them full time as an employee, as a consultant, and owning your own business. How do you handle that situation?
So that one's an interesting one. I'm actually, and to be quite honest, I am still employed with a company, but I actually sit more on the executive side of it. So I'm more at the C level, and I am just more of a board member type of thing. So it's a little bit different. And that was a unique opportunity for me to kind of do really what I enjoy doing, probably more than anything. I mean, being in compliance, and especially operational compliance, you're a problem solver. Like, that's one thing that you definitely get in there and you dig and you want to, like, you know, solve something that some people might be facing. And we have a lot of things that are not very clear within our industry, and it's very hard to understand because there's a lot of legal jargon behind it. So I like to bring that clarity to it and everything. But yeah, there's where was I going with this? Wait a second. I just
well, no, the reason why I asked that question was I have a really good girlfriend that started her own consulting business, and she actually posed that question to me. She's like, Bree, she's like, I go in as a consultant, help out all these businesses, and then they're trying to, like, get to hire me and trying to get me to be there full time. She's like, how do you handle that? What do you do? And and for me, I'm like, my time, my schedule, like me being able to control my environment and, like, my schedule, no one can ever top that. Like, no one will ever be able to take that away from me. So for me personally, I could not, well, I won't say never, but I would not, at this point, would not want to go and work for someone else, because I'm like, my time, my schedule is what's so important to me, and why I would not go work for a licensed operator, like a technology company, at this time.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And that's where I was, God, I got it so spacey. I swear I haven't smoked anything today yet either. So, but no, that was
maybe
the whole
that's
thing.
the problem.
I know, maybe that's what it is. No, and that's where I was going with that, is that this was a unique opportunity for me. It is not something like, I don't want to be hired by another, you know, cannabis company. Where I'm sitting now in this area on the C level with this company is they're actually kind of shifting and changing. And to be quite honest, there was a lot of change that needed to take place within this company. And for me, those are the challenges that I love. I love taking on a company that actually is facing a lot of issues and difficulties, having to scale down and then resurface and then come back, you know, into the game because it's tough out here. But that being said, yes, it happens quite often when you go in to consult, and you do get a lot of proposals for that, especially like towards the end, you know, of your contract or your service for them, because they can see how you can kind of turn things over pretty quickly. Let alone that, they also see the value in compliance being incorporated, you know, into their overhead, because normally it's like, oh, no, I don't want that. That's way too much. I can't afford it. And I get it. To a certain extent, I totally understand. Compliance, operational compliance, is not cheap. There is a lot of overhead that goes into that. But once you actually put it into action and you show them, like, the benefits that they can reap from it, you know, of course they're going to be like, oh my gosh, please come and work for us. Now, yeah, it kind of goes back to what you said as well, too. That's the reason why I started my business. It's going to be really difficult for me to, you know, just walk away from this and do that and become an employee again. But unless it's a unique situation and it's somewhere where I can actually make a lot of change at a higher level, and also trying to do better this message that I'm trying to send in the industry, to build our community and to unite everybody as well. It's a little bit of a project that I've been working on recently, and I'm really trying to reach out there a little bit more to these operators and just kind of see what's going on out there, and who's in some help. I'm really focusing on license holders more than anything, because our industry really needs their support more than, I mean, brands got what they have, and they'll be out there, they'll be doing their thing. But these license holders right now, no matter where you're at in any vertical in California, it's difficult. You more than likely you're facing some kind of issue, whether it's at the state or the local level. Yeah, so that's my other passion, is just kind of helping out and putting that that hand out there to everybody to let them know that they're not alone. Our community is strong when we're better, when we come together and, support each other. So I'm really trying to bring this message again to California operators and just hopefully trying to do that. But yeah, like I said, it's got to be a unique situation. It really does. Because I still have that passion to get my boots on the ground and do some change from the inside, and then, all of that. But yeah, this is why I have my company. So it's kind of difficult. It really is. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you really touched on a really great point about the cost of compliance operations services. And I like to always say, compliance is not a cost of doing business, it's an investment into your business. And again, talking about the mindset shift, if you can shift your mind to think that this is actually an investment in protecting my business rather than just a cost of doing business, I think that really helps move the needle forward with our type of services and really try and get our hands dirty and implement these different types of strategies. Yes. You also mentioned in California, very, very community-based. I mean, I've been across the nation in a lot of these different licenses across the supply chain, and really I still have never felt the type of community that I have felt in California, specifically Northern California and the Emerald Triangle. It's just it's an experience. It's a life-changing experience that I feel anyone that is very truly passionate about cannabis should be able to experience in their lifetime, because there's no other word for it but life-changing. I mean, the first time I ever went to a cannabis farm out in Northern California, I was grateful. I couldn't believe it. I went to 3 different small farms in one day, and I got to see them growing their other herbs and their veggies right alongside their cannabis plants, and their little toddlers running through and like grabbing the leaves and smelling their fingers. And it was just so incredibly beautiful. And with that being said, California is going through a lot of struggles right now. There's a lot of things happening where farms are not even putting plants in the ground this year, and they're putting liens on their homes, because a lot of people might not know this, but their homestead is a homestead. They have their cannabis plants, their veggie garden, and their homes all there on the same plot of land. Well, technically it's not like the same plot because they have to section it out, but their homes are right there next to their hoop houses and their outdoor plants. And so do you mind giving us a little high-level overview? I know this could be a huge tangent in itself about what's happening in California, what's happening with these tax cuts, and like, why is this all happening, and how can others make an impact and really help move the California industry forward?
Yeah, so we are definitely facing some unique challenges, whether it starts at the beginning in our verticals, to be quite honest, in cultivation. And at this point, right now, cultivation taxes is pretty high, depending on how you harvest. But for the most part, everybody does a fresh plant, which really does impact. And throughout the supply chain, what happens is majority of the time the cultivation tax is usually passed on, and it goes all the way through and carried to distribution, where it's passed on to the retailer in that sense. But the supply chain ends up being dependent on one another here in California. This is why our system is not really the greatest. And there's a lot of pressure put into distribution to collect and maintain and report taxes. And then what is also from the retailer as well. So this has actually created a really crazy burden, and we're talking about like millions of dollars that is being put into taxes in regards to cannabis, whether it's on the cultivation side or it's all the way to the consumer side. And then you want to, the other thing that impacts this, and this is a huge, huge issue here, is our social equity program. And we have very many social equity based operators that have been in their submission with their applications from day one, since here in California it was allowed. They're still not fully operational, and they're not fully approved. So first and foremost, if there was anything that should be reformed, it should be our social equity programs. And this is mainly at a local level, even though the state is collecting the taxes, the impacts, it starts at the local and it goes into the state level. The taxes that come with that for social equity is just astronomical. And there's honestly, I mean, when you think about like in any other industry with like a nonprofit, in some sense, not to say that social equity is a nonprofit, but it's not taxed the same as other businesses. Social equity should not be taxed the same as other businesses. This is the reason why we've created a social equity program, because this is individuals who have been afflicted in some way by the war on drugs. And in my brain, I'm just like, how can you ask these individuals to mount themselves up to the same level that you're asking a regular business, So just that in itself is big enough. Now, secondly, the second issue that a lot of us are facing here is a lot of local bottlenecks. So our grandiose region being the Emerald Triangle, Trinity, Mendocino, and Humboldt County, the cannabis programs are having a lot of difficulties getting their applicants through the process and approved. We have a lot of interesting CEQA, which is, it deals with water, basically, is what, and the land watershed that comes in your certain areas that you happen to be cultivating in. So there's a lot of local issues that you face. If you're in Mendocino and Humboldt, they're all over you on this stuff. As of recent, right now, Mendocino County is dealing with what they're calling vegetation modification citations that they're issuing, which is basically tree removal. And they, if you don't have any proof of a tree removal, in some sense, from almost 10, 12 years ago, you'll be cited. And so which is really kind of interesting. It gets into a lot of other stuff too, because it's like, you have active, nature, trees just fall. How are you going to prove that from 12, 15 years ago? So it's really quite interesting how, like, we have a state program. You have all of these provisionals for these operators who are holding onto a state license. They were able to get that because of our period that we had here in California to grant provisionals while you're going through your local approval. Local approvals have not finalized their programs yet. So you're faced with a lot of problems. And Mendocino, and I would say Mendocino and Humboldt, Trinity have been some of the most difficult. Humboldt is actually, their reform on their program is finally coming through. It's a slow process, but it's happening. Mendocino County has, it depends on like what type of program you're in, because they've had to change so many times that they have different phases now. And you have to qualify for a certain phase to get into that area. In the meantime, you got people who are, paying their mortgages, their leases on properties. They're still paying all the utilities. They're still paying their employees. They're still trying to do all of these things and keep it afloat, while you have local agencies that are looming and threatening to shut you down because of certain things that, you really, it's going to take you another $500,000 to get a professional to come out and to look at the property and to do, your grading and your slopes, and a professional to come out and to look at the property and to do, your grading and your slopes. And it's astronomical. I mean, it really is. And I can't imagine I mean, I haven't worked in a lot of industries, but when I think about other facets of ag, like these kind of things don't come up. I mean, they really don't. Yeah. And it's just, I'm blown away. I mean, I really am. I bang my head up against the wall every day, it seems like, because I'm having the same questions and the same conversations with local officials and trying to see what is happening with this and why is this being delayed. Local social equity programs are also a problem as well, too. They haven't been established. They've done the reviews, but they haven't had anything actually roll out yet. The state assigned money, and so that money is just going to sit there. And there's some local agencies that haven't taken it because they haven't developed their program yet. So who knows when the actual money support would come through for some of these guys. So yes, I have a few clients that are literally camping on their cultivation sites because they just sold the house. They just sold the trucks. They're trying to hold on because they've invested so much over the last 7 to 8 years that they can't let go. It would just be too hard for them. So they're trying to hold on. The future is unpredictable. We don't know how long it'll take. It's kind of interesting too. I had a client that in Mendocino County all of a sudden just pop up for the review for their phase 2 application, but I have someone who submitted at the same time and nobody's even touched it yet. So like I don't know how it's working. You can tell staff is short in these places when you call, you're trying to get a hold of people. Like it's compounded upon compounded issues is really what it is. So, but we have some great things going on with the primaries. And so we have some bills that we're trying to pass here in California in regards to tax reform. If anything, we need an emergency reform. I mean, it has to happen now. It can't be something planned out for next year. And I think more than anything, that's the kind of answers that in California, we're kind of, as operators, we're kind of looking for is, what can we do now while you guys are fixing this? Like, it's great that we've got all these people that are working in there and we're submitting our letters to our local assembly members and legislation. We're constantly begging them and knocking on their doors and ringing their phones and letting them know that this is killing us. But there's a lot of us that are sitting here going, okay, well, what can I do now? Because, like, I don't know if I can keep my store open for the next week. Like, I just finished payroll. You know, I get these questions as well, too. So, you know, we kind of like turn to each other for a lot of these kind of interesting things. And I think that's why I kind of started my page on, it's another extension of my business, but it's this Canna We Talk California. And it's kind of like this little community thing that I'm trying to build right now of us trying to share ideas with one another to try and keep ourselves going in the now while the reform is being taken place. You know, they're going to rewrite these bills and something that we can do for each other. And, you know, honestly, like I walk into a manufacturer and it's been sitting there forever. They're still going through local approval. They don't have their occupancy yet, but they're still paying lease. And all of these other fees on top of it. So, hey, let's figure out a way to use this space so you can make money for right now. You know, it's just in a retailer, you know, they're trying to figure out how to maximize their space and they're thinking that, you know, they got to expand and put all this money into this stuff. Well, first, hey, let's do an audit of your inventory. Let's see what's going on, you know, and how you're selling things. Let's find out your first in, first out. Are you guys like, you know, are you guys doing your cycle counts? Let's see where your deficits are and where you're suffering, you know, and those kind of things. So it's anything that can work right now. I'm just there to have the conversations and to hopefully perpetuate some kind of change and some kind of help for these operators while they're here now. And then share the stories, because that's the other thing too. I don't think a lot of operators understand that they're not alone. Like, I know it feels lonely out there because none of these agencies are calling you back. I mean, you're blowing their phones up constantly. You're going down to the counters at the local, you know, agency and asking for help. Like, nobody's getting back to you. And when you open up the doors to kind of like have the conversations with other people and have them share their stories, other people know that they're not alone. And it's scary, you know, with this business and this industry and not knowing if your people are going to be able to come in the next day and stuff like that. So that was my intention behind it. And I've had a few roadblocks because like Instagram keeps on blocking me and stuff, but I'm trying to set up the web
standards.
I'm trying to set up the website, and I'm trying to do some other things and trying to get some tidbits of information out there to operators so that they know that, you know, you're not alone. And there could be some help for you. You know, if you're confused about some things, let's talk about this. Let's get you guys going. I'm not saying that everybody should do this, but like, you know, I'm trying to reach out to the ones that need it the most. And I'm not, you know, charging anything for this. This is kind of being done out of my own time and when I have the ability to do it. But whatever I can contribute, if I can help at least one person, you know, in our supply chain, it's a lot. It really is. So yeah. California's great. There's a lot going on.
That's so awesome. Yeah. No, like it's great that you're doing. And remind me again, it's called Canna We Talk Cali?
Canna We Talk Cali. I wanted to really focus on California.
Okay.
And so,
Perfect.
yeah, and I've got a few things. I've been doing some interviews. I've been listening to like hundreds of stories. I mean, seriously, I didn't know that so many people would be DMing me. So I'm kind of going through them, and I'm really trying to meet a lot of these people in person. And then hopefully I can kind of get my podcast going and really kind of start to share these stories to everybody as well too. But there's a lot of people out there. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Love it. That's so great. And it's just been, the word is heartbreaking to just watch all of these legacy farms and legacy operators. You know, the state came to them and said, come out of the shadows, do this the right way, like be successful and do this the legit way. And then there's no support, no funding, over taxation, over red tape, like the entire tax structure needs reformed. I think the entire supply chain needs to be reformed. Yeah. I personally believe that there should not be forced distribution. I think if you want to have an option to have a distributor or a transporter come and take your product from B2B to business, then that's great. But I don't think it should be forced. No. I think that cultivators and manufacturers should have the opportunity to transport their own product without an additional license requirement on top of it. And especially your all licensing fees are insane. I mean, right. I know your guys' licensing fees are based off of the projected net revenue or gross income that you're going to bring in. And like to compare like New Jersey, to get a license in New Jersey is $10,000 flat rate, like for a retail license, and call it a day. Like, yes, there's restrictions on how much square footage you can have in that retail space, but it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I just constantly come back to the conversation of, because I've worked in so many other industries. You don't find this in any other industry. Like it's alcohol and tobacco, for goodness sakes. I mean, in California is nothing like that. I wonder sometimes about the local agencies and like, you know, the DCC, I'm so sorry, Department of Consumer Affairs, actually, because that's where a lot of it started, the DCC. But I just, you know, when they were developing all of these, I was just like, God, you guys, you must have just watched like way too many gangster movies, because like I have no idea why you seem to think that we were going to be like hand over fist with so much money. And like, did you really think that it was going to be like that? Like there was no way that we were going to be making that kind of money. I mean, it's in a newly emerging industry at that as well too. So yeah, some change got to come out of this. It's going to take some time. We will get there. I just want to make sure that the ones that want to stay and remain have the support that they need to do this. That's really, I mean, because I understand if you don't want to, but if you are, bless you, and I'm here for you. So that's really what it is.
I love that. So Canna We Talk, be on the lookout, new podcast, taking in all of the different stories. I will definitely be subscribing and listening in and cannot wait for you to launch that. That's so exciting. So with that being said, the future. what does the future look like? What are some of your wishes, whether that's for the California industry, federally, your own business? What do you hope for the future?
Oh my goodness. There's so many things that obviously that I would love to see. And I guess mainly because I come from working within a legislative framework, and I understand that change takes time. And so I'm always a big proponent about just continuously pushing forward and, you know, really staying on track with that. And so my biggest thing is always just, you know, to move forward, you need to understand where you came from. And, you know, we never really want to forget where we started, and with our Prop 215 and, you know, Rosenthal and Dennis and, you know, the Cannabis Buyers Club, like all of these things, we just never really want to forget where we came from, because that can definitely, you know, tell us a little bit more about our path in the future. And once again, it just kind of comes back to this whole thing of me just trying to develop this community again. In not, you know, we're still businesses. We're still going to compete against each other and all of these other things. That's just the nature of stuff. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you can't be supportive of your brothers and sisters in this industry like we used to be before all of this happened. So,
yeah, collaborate.
So yeah, I'm just more about really hoping and seeing our cannabis community, especially here in California, coming together, especially as we see a federal landscape taking place as well too, which is becoming very interesting. But I'm trying to really focus on our own state right now. As much as I want to dig into all the feds stuff, it's just, you know, it's just crazy. But yeah, I just really want to see the community come together and us to rebuild and really be supportive there for one another. You know, another thing is that I'm really supportive and looking forward to hopefully interstate commerce. I'm really kind of big on that, and especially, you know, being in California and with the West Coast being what it is now, or the Northwestern region in general, it's inevitable. Like it should happen. That this is something that should be shared amongst our neighbor states. And I also feel that each state actually benefits from one another and has other things that they can contribute and hopefully share, maybe learn from the other states and their operations as well too, that other states may not do. I kind of find that to be an interesting dynamic to kind of come into our industry. So I know it's far off. It could happen, you know, but I look forward to it. I really do. Yeah,
and I love that too. I love that, like, learning from each other and the different states and the regulations and things like that. Because I know you're a really big proponent of interstate commerce. I guess my view on that is, like, I look at it as more like a Band-Aid, because we want interstate commerce because of the oversupply, and then I worry about interstate commerce opening up, and then, okay, we stabilized our oversupply, but then are we going to produce more so that way we can even make more profit? And then we're stuck in this endless loop of situation, which, you know, we're not going to be able to fix anyway, because federal legalization is around the corner, whatever that means, whether that's a year from now or 5 years from now. But it's going to be consistent problems that we have day in and day out, and that's not going to change. But I do love that perspective of, like, learning from each other, different cultivars, different regions, just like the Appalachians Project. I think that's going to be really big, especially once when federal legalization happens. And I could be sitting at my mom's house in Florida and be ordering Southern Humboldt weed and knowing that I'm getting it shipped all the way across the United States, and I'm looking for Southern Humboldt specifically grown outdoor by the sun. And I'm really excited for that whole Appalachians type of situation.
Oh gosh, I know. And I mean, that's what, you know, when I think about West Coast cannabis, these are the things that I think about as well. And that's something that I thought we would have been ahead of the game with. And we would have done like a long time ago, because I mean, that's what it is. It's California weed. Like, you know what I mean? Right. Like, that's the whole thing. You could go anywhere else in the world and have that and share that with somebody, and they're just going to be like, oh my gosh, that's California weed. It's not going to be like, oh, that's Nebraska weed. Like, it's a little bit, California always has this, it carries so much more to it than anything else. So for me, that was just like, I don't know why we haven't done this yet, but,
Right.
yeah. So, and the other thing in California, honestly, is just, we really need to open up on the local jurisdiction. I mean, we're still restricted in very many areas here in California, with no cannabis program. You can't even have retail anywhere near, whether it's a city or a county. We're like 60% still in California. 60% of the areas in California are just, they're dry areas. So that's just another thing for the state that I would love to see. But, part of progress and change does take time. But it'll happen. It'll happen.
Open up local, and then more retails too, because I know that's like a huge problem of just lack of retail, lack of the local jurisdiction. I mean, in this conversation, we've talked a lot about the local jurisdiction, and I am seeing that a little bit in some other states, like the New Jersey comes to mind, that also has pretty stringent local requirements. Do you mind, before we wrap up our conversation, do you mind just kind of giving a high level overview of like, what are those challenges at the local level? Like, what is different from municipality to municipality?
Yeah, so in California, it's really unique. I can definitely say that. And it's kind of funny. I've actually gotten a lot of those conversations from a lot of people. They're just like, well, isn't it the same all the way around? No, not really. Each region and municipal that you happen to be working in, they all have different conditions that you must meet, your conditions of approval to gain your full occupancy to be wherever you happen to be, wherever your permit is going to be. So, and it goes, obviously it's in planning, it's, you're talking about transportation, and departments of water, sewage, and then it gets into fire, and you're dealing with your planner, who's in the building permits, and, it just goes on and on and on. Now, for most things, like I've been in development and construction for many years before cannabis. And I know from building something the ground up, like the permitting and everything that comes along with it and the process that we have to go through. I have never experienced this type of planning and building before in my life. And so, let alone the time, the contractors, the money, the issues that you kind of come across and face, like if you're dealing with a used building and things that you uncover during your, development and trying to get everything permitted and licensed, it goes on and on and on. And I will tell you that these are specific to cannabis. Each municipal, when it comes to your use permits and being able to occupy something, you have to be very specific on the fact that you are cannabis. You can't just be a general industry. You can't be a general transportation and storage company like any other distributor would be. So if you don't have that word cannabis in your description of use, especially throughout California, that's like the biggest thing. You're not going to get anything. You have to be identified as cannabis, and that even though you're doing manufacturing, like you're probably like your neighbor manufactures crayons. I actually have somebody who has a building next door to another building that manufactures crayons. Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. I mean, literally, they're both manufacturers, and this guy was able to get his business up and running within it was almost 2 years. And the cannabis company is in their 5th year of permitting. So it's absolutely insane. Now, given in most of these municipals, when it comes to the local approval, you're actually within an area. If you can get certain things accomplished prior to opening, they'll give you a conditional use. So you can actually go in and occupy the space, have a limited amount of employees doing operations within that facility under cannabis, but you will then have anywhere from 3 to 5 years to complete the rest of the conditions. So there's a couple of different things that happen, and depending on your project, you can kind of work with your planner and your builder. But and don't get me started on, like I said, water issues, because that's a whole other thing. So that's something else entirely. You're dealing, and this is like outside of CAL FIRE and like all these other OSHA. We've got, It's fun. We have all kinds of really great things here in California in regards to cannabis. And you know what? And sometimes I like to think about it that I'm really grateful that all of these interesting agencies within California are so wanting to get into cannabis and be, all up in it and understand it. And that's kind of like how I look at it most of the time when I'm talking to, water and sewage, and I'm just like, oh, sewage. Nice to know you guys are in the cannabis game. All right. You guys have this vested interest in it because you held up my project for 6 months on your review. Yeah. So you guys must be very interested in my project. So yeah, that's the only way I can look at it sometimes. It's astronomical. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah. And you're a problem solver. You have a positive mental attitude, which is absolutely crucial. And I appreciate that so much. And if you're looking to start a cannabis business, maybe don't do it in California. Even though I do like to say, if you can do it in California, you can do it anywhere. So
yeah, no, exactly. And that's what I tell everybody. If you can start in California, you're going to be fine in any other state. Trust me, if you can make it here, and it's weird, you can make it in any other state. So yeah, this is the challenge.
Yep. I was actually just talking to a client the other day, because he is out of Southern California, and he won this license, but then it got retracted, and it was something with the letter of intent on a building. There was 3 different letter of intents on this building, and someone else ended up winning, but then they paid, I want to say $8 more per square foot to get the building, and so now there's all these lawsuits and everything, and he was just he's like, Bree, I almost threw in my towel. He was like, fuck this, fuck cannabis. He was just had such a bad taste in his mouth. And I was like, look, you're doing it. You're successful. You're making a profit, which a lot of retailers aren't right now. And you can do it. And even though the second license did not work out as well as you planned, it's let's talk about other states. Have you considered other states? And he was like, I thought about it, but didn't really know. And I was like, well, let's look at New Jersey. New Jersey is a $10,000 license. You just need someone to be previously resident in New Jersey at some time. I was like, let's do it. I got all my application, all my SOPs. I was like, we can do this if you want to. And he was like, let me sit on it. Let me think about it. And I was like, don't give up. I'm like, you are successful. You're doing it. I know this left a really bad taste in your mouth, but you can do it. If you can do it in California, you can do it anywhere. So.
Exactly. Awesome. No, definitely.
Well, Desiree, this was an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. Before we wrap up, where can people get a hold of you? Also, if you don't mind pitching your products and services and what you have to offer and how people can work with you.
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way is probably through email right now. My website is up at CannaConsulting.com. The interface is just being worked on, but I can always be reached via email at Desiree at CannaConsulting.com. And you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn as well too. Yeah, so I also have Canna We Talk Cali. That's my other project that I'm working on right now and building up the California cannabis community. So you can find me on Instagram at this time, but I'll also hopefully be moving to YouTube very, very soon. I have people working on it right now, so we'll just kind of move all of that over. But yeah, where everybody's sharing and telling their stories. But in the meantime, while I'm doing all of that, I'm still doing audits. I'm still reaching out to licensed operators in California and meeting up with them and providing SOPs and playbooks, helping them out with their compliance audits, rewriting things, just trying to look at, analyzing their KPIs if they're, a little stuck on their operations and, why certain things are, efficient enough. And then also doing some OSHA and safety and health training too. So I'm still available for all of those things and any other kind of unique things you might have as well too. And if it's something that I can't offer, trust me, I can find somebody who can do it. Okay. There's so many people that I've been, engaged with in my network. It's absolutely crazy. So, but yeah,
Perfect.
That's about it.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Desiree at DK Consulting.com. That's the email, right?
Yep.
Okay, triple check in there. So awesome. Reach out to Desiree if you need anything, any compliance help. And Desiree, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure. Yes. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Of course.